Would you like to know the only place on this planet that doesn't have a digital ID program? Well, check this out. Here you go. Here's the one country / continent that doesn't have a digital ID program. It's Antarctica. And little did I know, there's at least 6 different countries that have a stake in Antarctica. There's even little towns in different parts. So Antarctica may develop a digital ID program in the future if more people move there. But right now it's just open to scientists. This is the Take Back Our Tech show, episode 16, where we're going to learn everything you need to know about digital ID. And I've been working on this particular episode and a report for the past 2 months. It's honestly the biggest project I have ever worked on. It has taken me a very long time, and it's been pretty exhausting. I feel like I know a little bit too much about digital ID, and I'm ready to just share it with you. So I'm glad you're watching today. There's going to be several different pieces of content, and starting from today, I'm going to be doing a digital ID segment on every single one of my next 6 episodes, with this being the first one, where we're going to look at what digital ID looks like on one continent. Today, we're going to be talking about North America. This is all in preparation and accompaniment with this report I've been working on called Life Under Digital ID, a Global Analysis with Solutions. Go to abovephone.com/digital and you'll be able to download this report when it's ready next week. I am putting on the final touches to the report, just improving the writing a little bit. And one of the things that distinguishes this report from other people is people don't read the technical specs. So they don't really know how digital ID is going to work. There's not even a single definition of digital ID. I've studied too many programs, so many programs from 6 different continents to come up with a definition of digital ID. We'll talk about what that looks like today. But more than that, we've looked at the technical specs to show you where it's most likely to come up and what it's going to look like. And more importantly, we have real solutions that you can use to opt out. So again, that's abovephone.com/digital if you want to download that report. There's also going to be an additional video I'm going to publish of my recent travels to Europe right before the new biometric entry-exit system was introduced on October 12th. And so as I left Europe, the biometric door literally closed behind me. Or did it? Or are there ways to still get into Europe? We'll talk about that in the report. But while I was there, I visited a few different countries, and I managed to get a few interviews with people on the ground. Some people who said that they would never use digital ID, and other people who are already using digital ID. And I think it'll be very insightful. So that one is going to be more of a fun travel vlog. And so when that comes out, it will also be on the TBOT channel. Maybe it'll be a little bit earlier for paid subscribers to TBOT, hint hint. With that being said, let's get on to understanding the report and understanding the landscape in North America. The first thing we need to realize is how these digital ID programs are presented is that lawmakers will often say that, hey, the digital ID will always be voluntary. Here's section 57 of the EU regulation. You can see here, users should be under no obligation to use the European Digital Identity Wallet to access private services. This is from the EIDAS regulation, which most EU member states are using. And they're saying that, hey, if you don't have Identity Wallet, access to private services should not be restricted or hindered. However, if users wish to do so, very large online platforms should accept them for that purpose. So you already have this open ID system today. When you log on to a service, they might say, hey, would you like to log on with Google? Would you like to log on with Meta? Would you like to log on with Apple ID? Now you might even see your country ID in there. But the more important part is they're saying very clearly here in this regulation that you won't have your services taken away by digital ID if you choose not to use it. And Australia has similar language in their bill, and there's also countries like India. So this is a Supreme Court ruling on India's digital ID system named Aadhaar, but they basically said people should not suffer from not having a digital ID wallet. They ruled that people could not be discriminated against on the lack of a digital ID. However, Aadhaar has enrolled over 1 billion Indians. There's 1 billion Indians using this digital ID already. And how did this happen? If it's voluntary, how did this happen exactly? The Supreme Court ruled that there shouldn't be an impact. Why did so many people in India use digital ID? Well, there are many different reasons. At the start of the new Aadhaar program, several major banks, which this is a reoccurring theme, banks will be one of the first to use digital ID, they imposed Aadhaar requirements to open a new account. So if you wanted to open a new account, you would need to be enrolled on the digital ID program. This was even after this Supreme Court ruling, which I think happened in, 2018? 2018. And additionally, not just banks, but mobile phone operators demanded customers link their Aadhaar ID. They were very, very aggressive from what I read, or they said they threatened people that they would disconnect their mobile service. In order to ship a package in India, shippers required people to send them a copy of Aadhaar, the unique code that is Aadhaar, and India's largest e-commerce system and digital wallet, Paytm, required Aadhaar for Know Your Customer compliance. So we're going to talk about how these corporations mandating digital ID is a very important link in the chain of events, and I call this mandate by proxy. The legislation and regulations say that this is voluntary, you shouldn't be impacted, but when it's opened up to corporations, for some reason, everyone gets the memo that they're going to impose digital ID. So it is mandated by proxy. But India is a complete program, which I call, when most of the people in the country are on this digital ID program. So how did India get complete? Well, the people turned on each other, and landlords in the country insisted on the Aadhaar ID in order to qualify as a renter. So now in India, without Aadhaar, you can't open a bank account, you can't mail things, you can't get a phone, and you are unlikely to live somewhere. So are you willing to do all these things? What is your line in the sand? Because the digital ID system is inherently exclusionary. If you don't play along, you are excluded from society. And you might be reminded of the COVID pandemic and the lockdowns and the same type of compliance measures that we began to see. It's this carrot first. They offered many things to get you to comply with a medical intervention, and then they applied the stick. People lost their jobs. People lost the ability to travel. The same exact thing is happening again on a global level. Like I said, I found Antarctica doesn't have a digital ID program, and there are places like Suriname, which is a country next to Brazil, where there's only 500,000 people. It's in the Amazon rainforest, and it's basically lawless. There are a few other countries that don't have digital ID programs or electronic ID programs, but most countries in the world, even the poorest countries, are working in that direction. So we only have a few years to make the choice. Are we educated on the topic? Can we talk about it articulately with other people? And more importantly, can we make sure our basic needs are met without relying on a digital ID? Because these restrictions are coming. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the UK, this is already old news now.
This government will make a new free of charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID.
He's already getting to the stick phase. He's hitting people with a stick, just so you're aware. That is what the timeline looks like. 2 years for digital ID to be available in modern countries in multiple different ways. And then the 3 years after that, 2027 to 2030, is the stick phase, where everyone needs to comply and be on digital ID or else. So where did digital ID actually come from? Well, we can look at the work of Kim Cameron, a Canadian computer scientist, who was the identity architect, the chief identity architect at Microsoft, he helped build the LDAP system, which was used as an enterprise software to help manage computers and access to things like printers across the company. And so he was very instrumental in the development of digital ID because he wrote this report. He wrote a report called The Laws of Identity, which we'll pull up here really quick. And the Laws of Identity, they outlined what the problem was that they were working on, which was that there's too many scams on the internet, there's too many cyber criminals on the internet, and also the problems, the inherent problems with people having to manage all these usernames and passwords. Oh my God, what a giant chore. It is a chore. It is a pretty big task to do that. And so what Cameron proposed was a single interoperable identity layer. And the important part was that this was not centralized. It was actually decentralized. And at its definition, this is not a digital ID, but this is a digital identity. And all a digital identity is a set of claims made by one digital subject about itself or another digital subject. For instance, it could say that Frank is a citizen of the United States. Frank has this social security number. Frank is 38, right? So it's these different types of claims that can be put together in a digital identity. And it took over 20 years for the ideas of Mr. Cameron here to be put into the real world. He was the person who conceptualized it, but today we have these different protocols and specifications. For one, the verifiable credentials data model. This is a specification released by the World Wide Web Consortium. And this specification outlines an interoperable digital ID system. It's also the most popular in the world. It's definitely used by Europe because the EDOS 2 regulations, they are based on the verifiable credentials data model. And what it allows is, we'll scroll down here, is there's three different pieces. There is the issuer, which is most likely the government that creates these digital identities. Then they get to people who are hold these digital identities on their phones. And then there are entities that can verify the digital IDs. So it's this triangle of trust, as they call it. And in the middle there's a data registry which contains like the shared vocabulary of saying, hey, how can we tell, what information do we look for on a digital ID to find someone's age? So it's kind of the shared schema or language of the digital ID program. Now I'll scroll down here, but this is the conceptual map or flow diagram of what this digital identity might look like. It's kind of what I was saying earlier. This is the information actually encoded in a digital identity. It can look like this, but really it can be any form of information about anything. It could be about yourself, it could be about someone else, it could be about someone you have custody of, and that is something that's talked about, is how do children get a digital identity when they're not old enough to have a phone? Well, their parent will own their digital identity, right? So there are mechanisms built for all those types of things, and this is a very large specification. If you want to read it, you can. I just want to show you what an example digital credential looks like. So there's one here. Here we go. So this is an example digital credential of someone who has graduated from university. There's, you can see the type of credential here. It's an example degree credential. And then you have these key value pairs of the description of the university, the name of the university. So in code, this is what a digital ID will actually look like. I just wanted you to see what the code will look like, so maybe you could start working with it, or at least you're able to speak about it to others, right? This is not some sort of black box thing. We can look at it, you can work with it. Now, it's important to mention that not every country in the world is using verifiable credentials. It's about maybe most of them with operable digital ID programs have based them off the verifiable credentials model. There is also one other way that a digital ID can be created. And again, this is a little bit of my definition of digital ID, but this is the ISO 180.13.5 specification, or the standard, which defines this family of standards defines new improvements to the security of physical IDs. And part 5-5 here is about having a mobile driving license. Now, similarly to verifiable credentials, this mobile driver's license does have 3 parts as well. It has the issuer, it has the holder, it has the verifier, but the main difference between the two is the verifier can connect directly with the issuer to grab the digital ID. And also what this looks like in practice is an actual identification card. More often than not, it'll be an image or a file that contains your identity on it. Now, the interoperable piece, the ability to query different elements of it, there are ways to do this in 180.13.5 just as well as verifiable credentials, but verifiable credentials, this model we were talking about earlier, is better. It's kind of easier to be able to query different information off of. That was the entire point of it. So the reason why I go into the technicals just a little bit is to show you that digital IDs are capable of tracking any piece of information about you and keeping them on a single digital identity. Now, we are just in the baby years of this technology. In fact, there's just been pilots with big companies that have just experimented with very basic things, like one, how to prove you were over 18 so you can buy alcohol, right? There's a query language for that these companies need to implement. There's a shared standard that they need to test. In the past year or two is when they've started doing these tests. However, these digital ID apps are now available everywhere. Now let's look at what they're looking like in the United States. The United States does not have a national ID program. And in this video, we're going to be covering the United States, we're going to be covering Canada, and we're going to be covering Mexico. There's a lot of lessons learned. In future videos, in every TBOT show segment, I'll have a segment dedicated to the digital ID of another continent that we can learn from. So in the US, there is no national ID, there's no digital ID program that they've announced, even though there is a lot of interest in digital ID, and there's many organizations working on digital ID in the US. In fact, in the US, more than anywhere in the world, the tech hub is still in the US for this type of technology. But what is coming in the US are these mobile driver's licenses. So they do call them here digital ID. They do fit into my definition of a digital ID. They're interoperable, and they are typically backed by biometrics. So how are digital IDs being rolled out in the US? No, there's not a digital identity wallet, there's no national ID program, but there are these mobile driving licenses which are being accepted by the TSA. They're also being accepted by the states as a valid form of ID. And you can see how important it is for Apple and Google to be involved. Big tech's involvement in this. Apple, Google, and Samsung. And some states like California have their own wallet app. And so these will hold your driver's license cards in them. This is an organization called the Secure Technology Alliance, where they are looking at the implementation of the standard ISO 8013-5 and seeing how well it is implemented in North America. You can see that this green means it's available and interoperable across any system that supports it. So there are many states in the US, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Montana, Louisiana, Arkansas, and also in Alaska. And also you see that there are parts of Canada that are also pursuing ISO 8013-5. I'll just call them mobile driving licenses from now on, that are also pursuing MDLs. So if you want to know how close the adoption is to these digital IDs, the good news is it is fairly low. Most states range from 1% to 6% of the people using these digital IDs, with Arizona down here topping out at 15%, that MDL conversion rate down there. The bad news is we're just starting this process, right? They haven't even really tried, one, to make these IDs useful, and two, to hurt your rights, to hurt your freedoms if you don't use this. Now, here is another way that the important chain of events that finally lead to digital ID come through electronic IDs. They also come through backing your IDs with biometrics. In most places in the US, there are not biometrics attached with an ID. However, due to the Real ID Act, where people needed to renew their IDs, some states have been using biometric solutions. And unfortunately, the images did not load here. But this is a case study by the California Department of Motor Vehicles. Let's see. Facial. There we go. So they came up with this tablet, and this is from a very big company in North America, but they're also everywhere in the world. They have technology in Saudi Arabia, for example. And what they do is they have biometric solutions. So this ID screen tablet in California is doing it's recording fingerprints, it's recording face prints and demographic data. And it can even create digital IDs for you. So it can scan passports, it can do all these different things, and there's some specifications for it. Now, this is being used by the California Department of Motor Vehicles. It is also being used in other states like Texas, like Illinois and Washington. So if you renew your ID in these states, you may have to go through biometric screening, and that's kind of how they get you. They get you when you need to renew your ID. This is something I saw everywhere in the world. This is how they do it. They wait till you have to renew your ID, boom, there's new biometric requirements. We'll learn more about this later. Let's talk about Canada. Oh, Canada. So we do see that there is a state-dependent digital ID program. There's no, much like the US, there's no national ID program for Canada. However, some states like British Columbia have moved to have a digital ID, and this is a digital ID. It's called the BC Services Card. It used to be a health card, and since this program was announced, they said the next time you renew your driver's license, you have to sign up for this BC Services Card. And it does collect your biometrics. It collects a photograph of you. And then once you have it, you can use it to log on to different health services, which we'll look at. But you have to do this if you want to drive. And you can use it in place of your actual photo ID. Now, for example, this is how the digital ID program of BC actually integrates. You can see if you scroll down here, you actually can log, hey, already set up? Continue with your BC Services Card app. So you sign up for the card in person, there's an app you can use to go ahead and download it. But the point is once you get your facial scan, and you essentially get an electronic ID backed by biometrics, a digital ID is created for you. There's nothing you have to do at that point. It's already created. It's just up to you if you want to download the app or not. And this is something I've seen everywhere across the world. So Canada is, and in some places they're not, in some states they're not even pursuing digital IDs, with those states being Manitoba, Yukon, the Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. I hope I'm saying that right. But 5 other states are actually pursuing digital ID programs, but there's no firm timelines there. So Alberta and British Columbia are the ones with actual digital ID programs for now. And there are governments in some states that are definitely resisting, but it's not that way everywhere. So this is coming to the US in kind of a side channel way. Similarly, in Canada, they say that, hey, it's a services card. It's not a digital ID, although you can use it exactly like a digital ID, and you're forced to use it if you want to drive. So let's look at Mexico next. And Mexico took the Hail Mary approach. They really wanted to make this CURP happen. The Clave Única de Registro de Población, the registering of the population, because Mexico, like many other low-income countries, not to say Mexico is the lowest, but they have problems with identifying most of the people in the country, right? There's no official registration system. These are free-range people, not on the grid, people who are off the grid. So they have multiple problems. They're far away from having a digital ID. They need to register their population first. So they took a very, very strict approach. Starting February 2026, the federal government has said you need to register for this CURP, this biometric CURP, where you have to enroll your fingerprints, digital photograph, electronic signature, and iris scans. They really do everything in Mexico in order to have different things like opening bank accounts, immigration procedures, accessing government programs and welfare, and to buy property, of course. And then also things like hospital care will require it, right? So this is the Hail Mary approach. And they've also hinted, well, no, they haven't hinted. They said by the end of 2026, all corporations will need to be able to accept this ID, this biometric CURP ID. So they are telling corporations to go ahead and upgrade their systems so now they can accept this identifier, right? To make it easy to track anyone at any time for anything that they're doing in commerce. So they've taken a Hail Mary approach, and there is a little bit of pushback. This is a vote that, this is Derek Bros of the Conscious Resistance brought this to my attention. This is a town in Michoacan, Mexico, that actually voted on becoming autonomous. And this is kind of in response to the whole digital ID requirements going on throughout the country. But I recently had an interview with Derek, and it's going to be published, and it talks about the constitutional reason why Mexican towns are able to do this. They're able to declare autonomy from the government and these programs. So Mexico has a confirmed digital ID program, although there's no app. Right now, it's an electronic ID. There's no digital wallet yet, but it does seem to be mandatory. Places in Mexico are fighting back. They also have one of the most strictest backings for biometrics. They're capturing a lot of different things. And let's talk about the chain of events to get there. So as I've said, and I'm going to wrap this up here in a second, as I've said, in order to get to digital ID, you need to have an electronic ID. It needs to be backed with biometrics. There is a whole process to get people there. It is disingenuous. It is outright misleading people. You think you're going to go register for a new ID card, but in reality, you have just enrolled yourself for digital ID. And this is happening everywhere. So my advice to you ahead of this solutions report I'm putting out would be to avoid biometrics at a government office if at all possible. This is going to be harder as life goes on, but this is why we're working on solutions. This is going to be a report that looks at everywhere across the globe and looks at solutions. So this report is going to be released next week. If you haven't signed up for it yet, go ahead, go to abovephone.com/digital and sign up below. Put your email here. You will get the report when it is released. And this is the time to draw your line in the sand. How uncomfortable are you willing to get? If they take away your ability to create a bank account, to do financial transactions, to go to the grocery store, and I'm just taking it all the way forward, and here are all the things that they can realistically do to try and force you to get a digital ID. Where is your line in the sand? Are you prepared? Are you starting to make those in-person connections with people in your area of things that could provide things that you need? We're talking about maybe medical supplies. We're talking about medical care. We're talking about shelter. We're talking about financial services. We're talking about food. Can you get into the state where you are able to express what is happening to another person and make the promise with them that no matter what happens, I will never put you behind the digital ID wall. You also have a right to not have an official identity with the government or biometric or otherwise. You have a right to be anonymous. You have a right to keep your identity private. And those are the types of solutions we're going to need. We need to go out into the world now and start educating others about digital ID. We have about 2 years before this gets really real. I'm going to be doing my part to educate and to share solutions. Please, if you found value in this video, please share it with 5 of your friends. Just take the link, tbot.substack/ this video's link, send it off to 5 friends who need to know about digital ID. These people don't necessarily need to believe in the ideas that TBOT subscribes to, but this is so vast, this is so impactful that People need to know about this because once you step through the digital ID door, there is no coming back. Again, thanks for watching. We're going to have a digital ID segment on the end of every TBOT episode for the next 6 episodes. We're also going to have that travel video. I am also excited to say, this is kind of out of left field, but I got to tour a facility that makes these really cool instruments called hand pans. And if you want to see that video, that's only going to be available to paid TBOT subscribers. Anyways, those are all my announcements for today. As always, remember, your connection is sacred. Peace.